So talking about like you call it weapons training versus gunfight training. Um, I find that a lot of schools and a lot of courses in particular are heavily focused on primarily marksmanship, which obviously is super important, but primarily marksmanship and manipulation. Whether it's a rifle or pistol class, it's all pretty much the same. It's primarily focused on that combative marksmanship and weapon manipulation, which both of those are super important. Don't get me wrong; those are really the fundamentals and the basis which you build all your other skills on. Um, but I feel like there's a lot missing in terms of that, and in terms of building general competency for gunfight training. Um, and again, because it's super important, but there's a lot missing on it, and I feel like it also builds potentially bad habits. So, for example, obviously you've done plenty of rifle classes, you've probably attended plenty of rifle classes or pistol classes, all the same thing. Everyone, virtually the entire class is all shooting on a line. So all the students are lined up and they all do whatever they're doing, their drills and all that. So there's no movement to cover. Um, there's no like drawing while moving to cover. No getting your rifle up while moving to cover. No, there's very limited shooting around cover or over cover. There's a lot of there's just a lot missing from that. And so, what are things that you do for your rifle classes to incorporate more of that? Past just the
Um,
fundamentals of here's how you shoot the gun accurately and here's how you reload it.
yeah, I don't think that my department is like cutting edge on this. I think this is fairly common. We do have rolling barricades. If you watch any of the on my channel, any of the shorts, you'll see that sometimes you'll see me doing training around rolling barricades. I try to incorporate cover probably about 70% of the time I'm shooting. Sometimes we do snap outs and snap twos. So snap out, you're behind cover, you snap out, engage. So you're trying to use that cover correctly in the distance and be mindful of where your muzzle at is in respect to the cover, et cetera, et cetera. Or we snap two, and snap twos are real important because okay, contact, we're in the open, and now I got to run to cover. I got to get to that cover and engage from the cover, when it starts and ends or whatever. So we do a lot of stuff with barricades. I think maybe the thing that I would say I've added or tried to focus on is multiple angles. Instead of just always putting the target directly in front of the piece of cover, I'll put a variety of targets and have the officer change their perspective on the cover relative to that target. So they're maximizing their cover relative to what they're shooting at. And I change that throughout the drill. That's a big thing I like focusing on in particular. Using vehicles as cover. Back in the day, we had and we still have them. They're the barriers, but they had all the steps and the little shapes in them.
Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
are they called? It's
Uh,
escaping me.
I don't know what they're called. Probably
It'll, it'll
probably
come.
probably like something like a stairwell barricade or something like that, or step
It'll come to
barricade.
me. It'll come to me in a minute. I feel bad I don't know it, but yeah. So those were all the rage. Like, fuck, it's probably been 15 years now. But they were the shit, and we still got them at our range, and that they mostly collect dust because one, they're a pain in the ass to bring back and forth,
Yeah.
and two, we don't shoot through triangles, we don't shoot through little rectangles. The cover aspect was nice. I mean, that's kind of cool, but for me personally, I put stuff out on the range like here's a car that's gutted out, so you're going to do different shooting positions around that car. Here's a vertical cover piece, which is more common what we use, whether it be the edge of a wall, a tree, a building, whatever. Just simple vertical cover post or a threshold,
Yeah.
right? That vertical cover piece is more common for what we use in law enforcement.
Something
And then I'll
like
use
90
something
degree
goofy,
cover, essentially.
right?
Yeah.
And I'll put like a barrel out there or just something else, a big chunk of wood, but something else that you can work around just to work on bracing. I find that is a lot more effective than using those barriers with little goofy shapes. I mean, I think there's a place for them, but I would rather use something a little more realistic.
Yeah. Now I'm going to assume for your context is obviously law enforcement and SWAT. Um, so the majority of your fights are going to happen either standing or in some sort of crouching position. Do you guys focus on any sort of other positions like prone or non-conventional shooting positions, or is that just so it's just so niche that it's just like we're just going to focus more on the standing and the crouching aspect of it?
On the SWAT side, we mostly stick to standing and a little bit of kneeling. Obviously kneeling's a thing. We don't do a lot of prone.
Yeah.
Prone is basically zeroing. And, if we're doing our quals, we do some prone shooting at 100 and a little bit more at 50. But prone is just kind of understood. It's just something it's part of the game, but we really don't focus on it because we don't shoot from fighting positions prone. I don't know.
Outside of maybe a sniper, SWAT sniper. But
right, but even snipers are mostly tripods now. Our team is almost not exclusively tripods. I was a hard sell on the tripods. It really took a long time. Yeah. I'd rather build a position with bags and stuff.
Yeah.
But I have found over time, especially when we started getting some really good tripods, I'm like, yeah, okay, I can shoot better from this tripod than I can building a position with bags and a bipod. I just can.
Yeah.
It just takes, it's a different type of shooting, and I had to develop that skill. But as far as the SWAT team goes, it's a lot of standing and a lot of moving and using cover and shooting off thresholds. That's what we do. And accuracy is relative. When your gunfights are at 15 feet and you're trying to shoot a man-sized target, how difficult is that? How much real precision does it take? Or is it more important that we get those rounds on target quickly, accurate enough?
Yeah.
But I like challenging my guys to change gears. So I'll have a bunch of different targets up there. One of them will be a hostage taker target with a relatively small hit zone in that cranial vault, up here. And I'll say, okay, shoot this one, shoot this one, and shoot this one. I'll say hostage. They know that means shoot the hostage taker. And now they have to change gears from fast to brace, breathe, slow, squeeze, make that hit. I need to give them I want them to have that kind of ability to change gears quickly when they have to give me that super accurate, what I call a high liability shot, which might not even necessarily be a hostage. It might just be there's a lot of innocence in the background or whatever.
Or you're in an apartment complex and you have to take shots.
Right. I need them to be able to take that high liability shot on demand and then go back to just, regular, just room clearing.
Yeah.
So.
Do you guys do any sort of, because obviously police officers, they tend to work in pairs, ideally at least. Do you guys do any sort of things like onlining to ensure good firing angles? So that way,
a lot of that.
Something really stupid that you commonly see, like people
shooting
very dangerous firing angles.
We have basic anti-fratricide rules. Online, body block, 45 greater than 6 feet off the muzzle, all this stuff. And you practice. You have one guy run up and engage a target, and then the next guy runs up and has to get into a position where he can safely engage that same target. Yeah, that's basic stuff. Basic weapon flow stuff.
Yeah. Onlining, muzzle beyond flash, all that good stuff.
Yeah. 101 weapons handling. It's a safety thing. And I think it's really what separates your more professional teams from maybe the more, I don't want to be overly negative here, less experienced maybe. Because that's kind of a thing that I think some teams overlook a lot, is that safe weapons handling and getting up online and using their weapons safely around each other. Yeah. It's something you can get away with ignoring if you don't really focus on it in training, because you're shooting sims, you're not shooting real bullets. And then when the real bullets start flying and that real concussion comes off that weapon, it's like, oh, okay, well, this is very different.
Yeah. It's also really important just for, you're talking about in terms of context of like SWAT teams, but it's super important for just general law enforcement officers too, because you got two guys, and where maybe one's over here talking to somebody else, and something happens over here, whatever, the officer's having to engage someone, or he's calling someone out, giving orders to somebody, and you see this guy draw, and he's pointing a gun, more or less an extremely dangerous firing angle to his buddy. It's like, man. Oof.
And we see that a lot. We call it shooting from the back of the bus. We see officers with the best intentions of helping win the gunfight, and then they'll buck around from, deep behind somebody else. Maybe they'll see a gap. Well, I can see the bad guy in this gap, so I'm going to shoot a bullet through that gap. And more often than not, they don't really have the skill to make that shot anyway, because if they were that skilled with the firearm, they would know better and they'd be up online. But neither here nor there. The point is that I see a lot in videos. What I don't see a lot, cops are crazy about crossfire. They will start screaming crossfire the second it even comes close to being an issue. Yeah. You'll have 15 cops. It's like when a gunfight starts and 10 cops scream shots fired.
Yeah.
We get it. We're here. We're here. There's no reason to put that on the radio. There's plenty of people here. Say it once. Let's move on. But those shots fired, shots fired, shots fired. They'll be hiding behind a car. Shots fired. I'm pretty sure there's something more productive you can do right now than just say shots fired, because saying shots fired on the radio isn't making this go away. So, but as far as the crossfire is the other one, it's like shot fire. Everybody's screaming, "Oh God, crossfire, crossfire!" Yeah. Look, in the real world, crossfires happen. It's okay to be in a crossfire situation. It's not ideal, but it's okay. We can manage it as long as we acknowledge it and we're mindful of it, and we're just moving to high liability mode.
Yeah.
So we try to avoid it, but if it happens, because that's the only way we can attack this, whatever, we're going to be okay. We don't have to keep screaming crossfire.
You say the magic word, it goes away.
Yeah.
That's just something else. Oh, that's actually why I wanted to ask you about that. So going back to the onlining and muzzle beyond flesh stuff, obviously you guys implement that. What are ways, like, for example, the people who are very used to kind of like your standard shooting courses where everyone's online, there's very little movement. They're certainly not doing any sort of, say, firing angles or anything that where you're actually offset or anything like that. When they go to classes where where it's more dynamic, maybe it is a team movement class, whatever. The people who don't have any experience doing that, it's very telling, because they're like, how do I move this rifle or pistol? Where do I put it to have in a safe position where I'm not muzzling this person when I'm moving around them? Or it's like the gears are turning because they're like, I was never taught this and I don't know what to do. So what are some of the things you implement so that way there's none of that going on?
If I'm teaching a CQB class, that's the first thing we cover is weapons flow. Okay. So I cover basically two ready positions: low ready, high ready. There's more of them, but those are the two, the basic ones. There's flat stock and some other shit, but low ready and high ready. We do a couple quick ready ups, work on that, manipulating that safety on and off. So we're clear on how I want that done. Okay. And then we move on to our two safe positions. Okay. Which is going to be Sewell, weapon straight down, or high carry, which is straight up. I don't really care which one you use. It's kind of contextual when you're going to use one or the other. But if you're doing one of those, chances are you're not wrong.
Yeah.
Chances are you're doing it correct. We just can't be sweeping our muzzles across people. And then we work on moving around each other with that in mind. Okay, so if I'm one drill I do is I have everybody go in a circle with their backs to each other, and I count them off 1, 2, and I say everybody just point your weapons outboard, and I say ones move, and all they do is they go high carry or Sewell. They turn around, they move to another part of the circle, and they come back up. And I go twos move, ones move, and they just keep moving across the circle just so they get used to, if I'm not pointing my weapon at something and I'm moving, I got to be here or I got to be here. And then we'll have them move, they'll be online, and I'll have them, okay, now move to the other side of that person. And then we'll have them do it, from high carry, and have them do it from Sewell, and they move back and forth. And it's very basic shit. Okay. But that's like the step one. I have to know that you're going to handle that weapon safely like a big boy before we move on to stuff, other more dynamic things.
Yeah. And this is important too, because you might not just be moving around a teammate, you might just be moving around innocent people. Like people, it might be your wife, your kids, or whatever, right? I mean, learning how to move around people with a loaded firearm when you need to get online with them or push past, whatever's the case, wherever you need to move. Being already comfortable and trained and well practiced, and hey, I know where I need to put my muzzle to keep it safe, rather than trying to learn that on the job, so to speak, or in the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's that's kind of a more advanced thing on the civilian side. It really isn't in training circles. But when most people just train on that flat range and then train shooting, they don't do a lot of like real world sims training.
Yeah.
They don't really get an appreciation for how important that stuff is. And, shooting sims, you're never going to get appreciation for how powerful that muzzle blast is coming off that rifle and how much damage it can do to people.
Yeah.
Right. And how, you really, until you start shooting real rifles around other people at close proximity, you don't really get an appreciation for it.
Especially,
and that's
especially in a structure.
Stuff. Yeah. I mean, to a basic rifle school for patrol officers, I'll give them a little bit of exposure to that because it's important, but not really a ton. And it's near the end of the week. It's a week-long class because it's really kind of advanced. And they got to feel it. I want you to experience this in training, what that muzzle blast nearby you feels like in the safe context, obviously. But I don't want the first time that to happen to be in a shooting like, oh shit, and it's overly shocking to you. On the SWAT side, we do it all the time. We do it constantly. But on the patrol side, it's very limited because it's dangerous. It's dangerous training. I have to make sure I have to check all the boxes to make sure you do everything else correctly before I'm going to put you in that situation.
Well, I mean, that concussion's a very high producer of stress, especially if you've never experienced that, and suddenly, whatever, you're two patrol officers inside of a structure because you're doing some sort of house search or whatever, and now your buddy just shot someone next to you, and that concussion, especially in a structure, it's extremely jarring. It's a very high producer of stress for people who've never experienced it before.
Yeah, it's interesting. But under stress, it could be very different. It could be I had a guy shoot a guy with a machete at 3 feet. The guy was 3 feet away. I was standing right next to him, and I remember when he shot him. And honestly, it didn't seem that loud. I was like, that doesn't seem that loud. But that's just auditory exclusion and stress and stuff. So you just never know how it's going to be. Or how different people are going to react to that. But you definitely want to kind of expose them to it in training.
Absolutely. Then you get an